I'm John Grisby, the founder of XPX UK. Welcome to XPX London's September Virtual Pillar Expert Collaborative. This month, we are featuring the topic of digital transformation. Now, digital transformation has received a renewed focus from many businesses, of course, owing to the coronavirus pandemic. But it seems like every business is looking or needs to do some type of transformation or transition to digital, especially in this day and age. Phil and David at Deltabase are the experts in digital transformation, and they're going to share with us some insights from the work they do with private equity investors. Enjoy.
John's invited us to come and share some perspectives from the work that we do, helping private equity investors bring the digital transformation lens into the investments that they make. So what we'll step through, just a little bit of an intro to us and what we do, just to set the context. We'll talk a little bit about digital transformation and why it's such a hot topic right now. We'll then step through the 6 key areas that we look at when we assess a company's digital transformation capability. And we'll share some examples of best practice as well that might be helpful for you guys to be aware of when you're working with your clients. So we'll share some good practices we've seen from companies like Bionic, Haynes Publishing, Gymshark, Engine Group, and Sykes Holiday Cottages. And then we'll summarize with some key kind of conclusions and takeaways, and then we'll have a Q&A discussion at the end. So in a nutshell, what we're all about, we're an independent digital transformation benchmarking and insight firm. Our purpose is all about bringing the power and potential of digital transformation to all companies in all sectors. So as we saw in our intros there, Dave and I have worked across some of the world's largest organizations with some really quite cutting edge digital transformation initiatives. And we really want to try and bottle that up and bring that into the mid-cap. So the way that we're doing that, we offer 3 main types of service. The first one is around benchmarking. So we're able to measure the current maturity level of any company in terms of their digital capability. And we can do that because of the techniques we use without needing any input from the company themselves. We then focus very much on uncovering the opportunities. So where is there opportunity to add value to a business by embarking on digital transformation initiatives. And then finally, we've got a network of expert providers that we can then refer our customers onto to go and execute on the opportunities that we find. And we've got 2 main customer groups. One is private equity investors that want to use us to find additional value in their investments. And the other is in consultancy. So we help consultancies to deliver digital transformation strategy work for their clients. And the things that our customers tell us are the reasons why they use us is because we're completely independent. Our insight and benchmarking is accurate. We've got a very comprehensive view of what we look at when we assess companies. We're very much focused on actions. None of what we do is a vanity project. It's all about being able to take action and unlock value. And our turnaround times are really very rapid compared to, I guess, the old school consulting alternatives. So we turn around our assessments in around about two weeks. So on to David to talk a little bit about kind of why digital transformation is such a hot topic right now.
Thanks, Phil. So why digital transformation now? I mean, I think it's been an ongoing theme for the last probably 3 or 4 years, where digital transformation has kind of started to emerge and become kind of more mainstream. But particularly with the COVID-19 and the whole pandemic, it's been brought much more to the fore. And is clearly kind of going to be a theme that as businesses start to emerge from COVID-19 is going to be a real differentiator that starts to work out who's going to thrive and survive versus those that are going to really struggle to engage with their customers. So many businesses have been upended. Successful business models that have kind of been working for years are suddenly, businesses are really struggling with them as they've kind of been damaged as we've gone into kind of the whole lockdown and dealing with the pandemic as we live alongside it. And also customers' habits have changed as well. So the way consumers are working and buying and using services has changed massively, and there's a whole new environment out of there. And there was one report that was done by EY that we're quoting there on the slide, where it's saying digitalization was a can before the pandemic, but now it's a must. And I think that really kind of sums it up in terms of the businesses that are going to thrive and survive are going to be the ones that do embrace this. And many companies have kind of had to have a crash course in digital in terms of having to provide digital ways of working for their employees, everybody working from home. So they've really had to adapt in order to carry on doing business, because they've had to. So it's become kind of a real must thing for them to embrace. And also Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, he commented that this was kind of back in April, so kind of right at the start of it, that at Microsoft they'd seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. So it's really picking up pace and becoming rapid. What I also wanted to do was to level set on what we mean by digital and digital transformation in particular. And when people hear digital, they quite often think of kind of media, websites, social media, and that is one kind of important element of digital. But the way that we see digital is a more kind of all-encompassing, all-embracing definition that we see here on the right-hand side of the slide. And that's about the continuous re-engineering of business capability. And what we've done is identify kind of the 6 key areas where we see that as kind of being really important. And customer engagement is kind of one of those, but also we look at strategy, business model, technology, people and culture as well, and how we can use those to unlock business value. So just going on to those in a little bit more detail. These are kind of the 6 areas that we're going to talk about today, and look at some examples of where we've seen kind of mid-market companies that have been looking to go through a deal phase and how they've been embracing these 6 different areas. And just to kind of run through them in a little bit more detail, from a strategy perspective, we're looking at how prepared is the business that we're looking at to guide its DX agenda? How well aligned is its strategy to actually dealing with digital? Then also looking at the business model. So how adaptable is the business proposition and the structures that they've got in place in order to be able to embrace digital, and how well set up is their business model to be able to handle that? Then the third one is customer engagement, where we're looking at what the business's capability is there to realize customer value. So how are they embracing digital technologies, digital ways of selling, and how effective are they being at engaging with their customers? Data is the 4th element. So how proficient is that business at using data? How kind of culturally have they adapted to being able to kind of exploit data within the company, and being able to transform their business based on kind of real data points? The 5th one is technology. So how effective is that business at utilizing technology? Technology is clearly kind of a big enabler for digital transformation, but it's kind of, we see it as one element of it rather than everything having to be about technology. But it's clearly an area where investment in the right technologies can really help take a business forward. And then the final one, and is quite often the most kind of forgotten about one, is the people and culture element of it. So how ready is that business to embrace digital innovation and the whole kind of change process that businesses have to go through? Because you can change all the systems, all of the ways of working, but if the people don't embrace it and the people don't make it happen and buy into it, then it's not going to succeed. So that's kind of a really important element for us. So what we're going to do now is go through each of those 6 areas in turn, just talk in a little bit more detail around kind of what are the main things to think about from a digital transformation perspective, and also some best practice examples on that. So Phil, you're going to talk about strategy first.
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, for strategy, essentially what we're really trying to understand here, and things to consider here, is around, for the clients that you work with, what stage are they at in their digital transformation journey? So we don't really view digital transformation as being something that you start and something that you stop as a single project or program. It's really more of a journey that all businesses are on at all times. So things to consider here is, well, what stage is it at this point in time? How is it approaching that journey? Does it have in-house capability, for example, and skills to be able to understand what the right target point is for digital transformation at any point in time and how to navigate that? What kind of governance arrangements are in place to make sure that investments in digital transformation are successful and get the right outcomes? What does underlying business performance look like in the context of investment in transformation? It's not uncommon that when a business invests heavily in a major transformation, the underlying performance then has some very visible wobbles. So there's another thing to kind of bear in mind is kind of how can the company demonstrate control of its underlying business performance and growth even when it is transforming. And then finally, when you get higher up the maturity levels of information, there are some ethical considerations as well, particularly around the use of artificial intelligence, which is another thing just to bear in mind that companies are staying on the right side of. So the best mid-cap example that we'd like to share with today is a firm called Bionic Services. So Bionic Services is it's a B2B brokerage that helps businesses get the best deals on their energy, their broadband, their finance, and also on their insurance policies as well. Interesting story. I mean, it started out very much as a kind of a traditional brokerage, very much call center sales based, with a technology element. And what it's done, its strategy has been very much to actually just flip the balance of that. And they now describe themselves as a technology business that happens to provide B2B services. And their rebrand to Bionic is all very much part of that. The kind of the connotation of part human, part machine. And they really have done a very, very well thought through and top to bottom pivot towards being a technology business. Their CEO, Paul Galligan, is ex-comparethemarket.com, and he's brought that .com mindset and ethos to the firm. So they've gone through a fundamental reinvention of what they do and how they do it without impacting the types of service they can provide to their customers. They still provide the same brokerage services, but what they also provide and power is some of the underlying technology that sits in other B2B comparison websites. So they've got proprietary technology that they provide into comparethemarket.com and others as well. So they've gone through a real pivot and refocusing of their business. So when we assessed Bionic, that was one of the real standout strengths of that particular firm. Next up is business model. So the kind of things to think about there is around products and services. So it is a company 100% reliant on more traditional and non-digital products and services. If it's a business that's got a little bit of a blend of digital products and services plus traditional products and services, kind of how is that trending in terms of revenue share? Other things to consider around kind of process automation. You have opportunities to automate processes already been identified and executed on, and also have digital ways of working and tools and use of data been applied to optimize what goes on in the supply chain, in finance and HR in the back office there. And also, is it a firm that's got the capability to be able to innovate and generate its own ideas, new concepts, and see those through to execution? Great example that we saw earlier in the year in the mid cap is Haynes Publishing, which, as many of you guys will likely know, started out as a printed maintenance manual publisher. But what Haynes has done over the last sort of 5 to 10 years has been a very, very deliberate and actually quite aggressive pivot away from the printed publishing business and into the software and data business. And they've done that through multiple acquisitions. So they acquired Vivid Automotive 2008, Oates in 2016, E3 Technical in 2017. And what that's enabled them to do is essentially reinvent themselves as a digital business. They've actually since divested their printing assets, their printing business, and 50% of their revenue now comes from selling data and selling software. Fascinating case study.
Okay, so moving on to customer engagement and what we think are kind of the main considerations that sit under that. So some of the things that we've looked into have been around, first of all, kind of looking at the insight capability that the company has. So what kind of system landscape and skills does it have in place in order to gain insight on their customers, how they behave? So that typically may be around kind of a CRM system they might have in place, and the skills and capabilities that they have to then gather insights from that. And specifically if they're doing things in real time, or if they're doing things that are more reactionary, what their kind of strategic vision looks like. We dig into digital marketing, so trying to understand how it's developed its digital marketing approach and how it creates customer advocacy. So the example we've got here is around Gymshark, and is a great one in terms of looking at how they're a company that can really engage customers well, build up that social and online presence, and really create that real customer affinity. E-commerce is an important element of this one. So how has the company embraced digital channels to be able to sell and deal with its supply chain using e-commerce? So that's across both kind of B2B and B2C type customers, trying to support their growth by using digital and online channels to support that. We look at customer experience, and this really focus around how do customers rate the experience of doing business with the company. So looking at what customers are saying online about them from a sentiment perspective, and how customers are rating the products and services that the company offers, and how effective that's being through their digital channels. And looking at customer engagement technology, so what technology have companies deployed in order to engage their customers? So quite often you can see that they've used things like augmented reality, for example, or using technology to do really detailed kind of micro personalization for customers. You can really kind of get a good feel for how well a customer is embracing building that digital relationship with their customers. And the example that the best practice example we've got here from the mid-cap is Gymshark. And Gymshark was founded in 2012 by Ben Francis, where he started the business up in his parents' garage, and he's rapidly grown that business into one of the most recognizable brands in fitness, and is selling across kind of 178 countries now I think, and is really a business that's been kind of digital first, so has built itself as a real powerhouse of being an online retailer. And the way that they've grown that business is kind of really interesting, kind of from a digital transformation perspective, in that they've built it by enrolling millions of highly engaged followers onto its social platforms. And they use that to collaborate with them, to use influencers within the kind of the fitness and gym lifting community, as they call them, and really build that kind of really strong customer engagement. And that's really enabled them to build their brand. And you may have read recently that they had kind of over a 1 billion valuation for that business as it went through the process of getting some private equity investment in the business. So that approach has been kind of highly successful in driving their sales through that, and they've really adapted through the COVID-19 pandemic as well. And one of the things they did, for example, was to rename their social channels to Homeshark, to represent the fact that people were engaging with them from on home rather than within the gym, as while the gyms were closed. So moving on to data now. So some of the key considerations that we have there is looking at the capability that the company has from a data perspective. So looking at, does the company have the capabilities to maximize its value from data? So have they got the skills in place? Have they got the leadership in order to really effectively drive value out of their data? Do they have the assets? So are they actually collecting data? Do they understand the data asset that they've got and how they can monetize it? Do they have the culture that enables them to be able to embrace that data and actually enable people to make rapid and quick decisions based on kind of real-time data that they're getting within the business? Having that right kind of tone from the top within the business from a data perspective is really important to making that successful. Do they protect their data? So that's kind of one of the biggest kind of upcoming threats to businesses, is are they protecting it? Are they putting the right security around it to make sure that they're managing that in the right way and mitigating the risks around that? And finally, are they able to kind of make decisions from that data? Is it data-led in its decision making? Can you see a clear correlation between the decisions it's making and the data it's collecting? The mid-cap best practice example that we've got here is the Engine Group. An Engine Group is a marketing solutions company, and they really put kind of data and digital at the heart of what they do. And so they want to be kind of driven by results and kind of guided by people. So they've really embraced that kind of data agenda, and they themselves and they help their clients really maximize the value out of the data that they've got. So it's a very kind of clearly data-led business from top to bottom. And they've kind of moved into that position and become kind of quite market leading in that space through acquisition. So buying in the capabilities, buying in the skills, through acquiring other businesses to build up that capability once they kind of recognized that that's what they wanted to lead on and saw that as an opportunity for them to pivot. And they've done that successfully to become a market leader in that sector. And the final point on that is that they've done kind of great skills investment in this. So they've built up great access to data and analytics skills and have really built that out of kind of as a center of excellence for the business around how they're getting access to those skills and those people that they need, but also to the data platforms and the insight tools, and exploit kind of their wider group, because it's a global company that's got capabilities in lots of different countries, lots of different clients, and they really kind of pool that skills platform together to exploit that. So moving on to technology, the considerations that we've got here is kind of looking at the technology landscape. Does that company have a modern IT landscape and that's supporting its business goals? So looking at the overall landscape of technology they've put in place and how it's supporting their digital transformation goals, and are they keeping their landscape up to date and modern, and the right set of tools that they need to run that business. And that's really about making sure that the technology is a business-driven thing rather than just technology for technology's sake. We also look at cloud adoption. So has the company adopted and started moving towards using cloud technologies, and a lot of the kind of speed, agility, and innovation advantages that can come from cloud computing. We look at their apps development approach, so where they develop their own capabilities in-house. Does the approach that they're taking to that application development really start to deliver some of that agility and pace? So that can be about whether they're using kind of agile and DevOps type capabilities. They've got the right skills in place in order to be able to support kind of modern, rapid application development. We look at the workplace tools that they provide. So is digital technology used to support creating a modern and flexible working arrangement? So are they using kind of productivity tools to work digitally and have a digital workplace? And that's been a really critical one for COVID-19, and where we've probably seen the most kind of rapid adoption of new tools to enable people to work remotely and from home. We also look at cybersecurity. Has the company developed its cybersecurity capability as its digital footprint has grown? So have they got the right skills and tools in place in order to support that? And again, here we're using Gymshark as the best practice example that we've seen here, because they've really built kind of a modern technology landscape that's cloud hosted. They use mainly using kind of software as a service based software. They've embraced using cloud platforms to host their applications, as well as using kind of cloud hosted solutions. So they've really made kind of a strategic utilization of cloud solutions to run their business, and that's enabled them to meet their growth ambitions. So because they've built that cloud-based environment that's flexible, it's enabled them to be lockdown ready, but also enabled their growth agenda as well. And it's also meant that they haven't had to kind of furlough any workers, because they've really kind of adapted to the lockdown situation.
So the final consideration then is in the all-important people and culture space. So the things to look at here, I mean, really, it's top to bottom in terms of understanding the types of skills and capability and experience that non-executive directors and the executive team bring to the table that will help to make any investments in digital transformation successful. It's about the underlying capabilities and skills that exist within the teams, within the business, but also how that company leverages partnerships with third parties to fill in the gaps. It's about that kind of ongoing investment in its capability as well, in the form of recruitment and in the form of learning and development. The other thing to look at there is around kind of how well engaged and incentivized the workforce is. Innovation is one of those things that quite commonly can very powerfully come from the workforce. It can come from within an organization, but a workforce that is downbeat, disincentivized, disengaged is less likely to be contributing innovation than one that is engaged and well incentivized. And then finally, the culture of innovation. So as David said at the beginning, so many digital transformation investments have actually ended up being unsuccessful and not delivering on their promised benefits as a result of the changes not being adequately adopted and embraced by the organization. So the culture of a firm is so important to consider as well. The best practice example that we've used here from the mid-cap is Sykes Holiday Cottages. Once upon a time, they would have described themselves as a short-term holiday rental firm, but much like Bionic, these guys now describe themselves as a technology firm that happens to provide a platform for rental cottages. And they have had an incredible growth. They were invested in by Living Bridge in 2015 at a valuation of 54 million. And the most recent valuation in 2019, when Vitruvian Partners invested, was 375 million. So pretty stratospheric growth. And it's absolutely fair to say that a fundamental part of that growth is down to that pivot away from the actual rentals being the core business to becoming a digital platform. And the people and culture element has played a big role in that. The top team at Sykes, many of the executive team have come from fairly noteworthy .com businesses, so moneysupermarket.com, Betfred, Skyscanner. That brings with it a really good sense of what good looks like in terms of being a digital business and engaging customers in digital platforms, but also looking after the underlying data and technology that's needed to underpin that. And also from a culture standpoint, Sykes has got a really strong culture when it comes to the cultural signals that support a culture of innovation. So there was a McKinsey study in around about 2015, I think it was, that looked for the what was the kind of the common cultural characteristics of firms that were successful in adopting digital innovation versus those that weren't. And they found that businesses that had a culture that was supportive, progressive, empowering and collaborative were ones that were able to take advantage and deliver the benefits of digital transformation. And from our assessment of employee sentiment, Sykes has basically scored a 3 out of 4 on those cultural characteristics. So people and culture played a very big role in Sykes's reinvention and very impressive growth. So just closing things up. Clearly, we've stepped through some isolated examples there of good practice. The important thing to consider really for any business at any point of investment really is the rounded picture of the strengths and the weaknesses, and of course it's very important to understand where those strengths and where those weaknesses lie, and that's equally true whether you're on the buy side or on the sell side of an investment. And of course, both strengths and weaknesses can actually be very positive things from a sell side perspective. The strengths are things to shout about when demonstrating kind of the market leading capabilities of the company, and the weaknesses, so long as they're identified and a response is developed to how those weaknesses can be addressed, they can also form a really solid part of the equity story for the next buyers as well. So really important to consider all of these things in the round. So I guess key takeaways from us would be, you don't miss the opportunities and risks that digital transformation brings. Equally true on the buy side and on the sell side. When you're on the sell side, absolutely think of these things well ahead of exit, because buyers and their advisors will be. So understanding the lay of the land and what the future opportunities for the firm are before the buyers get to that point of understanding will be hugely helpful in exit conversations and negotiations. And of course, we're here to help with this stuff. So get in touch if there's anything you think we can ever help with.
Excellent. Listen, if you have any questions, contact me. If you want to network, I'll be connecting you. But thank you very much. Stay safe and healthy. And I really appreciate your attendance.